everyone, and welcome to the finals of the StarCityGames.com Dallas Open Weekend, part of Season 2 of the 2018 SCG Tour, brought to you by Twitch and Ultimate Guard. Cedric Phillips and Todd Anderson here in the booth. Nick Miller down there in the feature match area, going to give these players the green light as we are going to prepare to watch Tan and Grace, Ross Merriam, and Brendan DeCandio. That's Team BCW on your left against David Thomas, Brian Basoco, and Jonathan Job on your right. A fist bump, good sportsmanship, and we are underway as Tan and Grace is going to start things off with a Ponder. Grace on Grixis Delver, deck that he has played for some time now. David Thomas on Blue-Black Death Shadow, the breakout deck at Pro Tour 25th anniversary in the hands of Josh Utter-Layton. And while David Thomas is no Raptor, he's pretty darn good in his own right.
Yeah, this is actually a flip-flop of what we saw earlier. David Thomas was on the play their first time around, and his start of Cycle Street Wraith plus Reanimate put him low enough so he could cast a turn 2 Death Shadow, but also just had a 3/4 threat early in the game that doesn't die to Lightning Bolt, and effectively is unblockable thanks to Underground Sea. Now he's on the draw. Things could go a lot differently as the texture of the game changes based on play and draw.
Well, David Thomas is going to start things off by sacrificing Misty Rainforest. And that'll get him in Underground Sea.
In matchups where you don't take a lot of damage from your opponent, you know, it's important to have Watery Grave in your deck, and we see that with 3 copies versus only 2 Underground Seas. That way you can effectively turn on your Death Shadows. But if you want to use Snuff Out, if you want to cycle Street Wraith, if you want to cast Thoughtseize, you have to manage your life total carefully, because if you take too much damage, you can just die to a True Name Nemesis or a stray Lightning Bolt.
This will be a Thoughtseize by David Thomas targeting Tan and Grace. We'll see how Grace wants to respond here. Grace might be thinking Daze, but instead he'll show the hand. There's a Spell Pierce. Let's make it 2 of them along with the Daze. An Inquisition, a Kozilek, a Gurmag Angler, and a Brainstorm here for Tan and Grace. Thomas will write down the contents of the grip.
So unless David has a very good card that he wants to protect from Inquisition of Kozilek, this Thoughtseize is very likely going to take Brainstorm, simply because the rest of the hand is just very reactive. And we see that decision made, Brainstorm down.
Brainstorm, maybe the most powerful card in that hand. Going to go to the graveyard now as we head back over to Tan and Grace. Grace is going to play a Ponder. That will resolve. Top couple of cards. See if Grace finds what he's looking for.
Looks like Wasteland in there, which doesn't help him actually make land drops here too well. But if he's able to hit that Underground Sea from David Thomas, it might stunt his growth early on. We saw Wasteland play a huge role in this matchup previously, as well as any sort of Delver v. Delver matchup.
Long Ponder here for Tan, and no pun intended. But this is a very big decision for him, especially for what he's looking to accomplish here on the SCG Tour. Ponder is done resolving. He's going to Wasteland that Underground Sea, hoping that perhaps David Thomas doesn't have another land. Wasteland you back.
Yeah,
okay.
That's bad for Tannen, because I'm pretty sure that Wasteland was the only land on top. He gambled a little bit, hoping that David didn't have a Wasteland. I'm pretty sure he had a Ponder on as the second card down.
Watery Grave, untapped, Delver of Secrets. Grace has no mana. David Thomas does not have an Insectile Aberration just yet. He'll play a Marsh Flats. We're going to see an attack here in just a moment, I'm sure, but first he's going to sacrifice that Marsh Flats, fall down to 14, potentially 12 if he wants that other copy of Watery Grave. We could see a Death Shadow show up here very quickly, Todd.
Yeah, 12 is the threshold for being able to resolve a Death Shadow without it dying to its own ability. You know, that's why the deck plays Watery Grave. That's why the deck plays Thoughtseize. Even Force of Will helps push you towards that end. We've seen newer versions of the deck popularized by Josh Utter-Layton at Pro Tour 20th Anniversary, using even Reanimate on things like Street Wraith to deal yourself large chunks of damage, because getting under 12 is a huge priority.
This will be a Ponder here from David Thomas. He's taking a look at a couple of cards. See if he likes what he finds.
Day is a huge card here just in general, because Tannen is so low on mana and resources.
Thomas taking a long Ponder as well. Looking to stop Operation Get Tannen a Trophy. Funny to note, Tan and Grace, Brian Basoco, they drove together for this tournament.
Nice. Well, there seems to be 6 cards in the graveyard for David Thomas, as well as a Gurmag Angler in hand, and that is one of the better threats in the matchup because it doesn't die to Lightning Bolt.
There is a Gurmag Angler. Tannen Grace is going to go with a Force of Will. Street Wraith here from David. David's so smart because he knows there's a daze right there. Yes, he does.
Hell yes, there is.
That is going to put the Water Grave back in the hand. Daze will take care of that. And now Water Grave's going to – I think he already played a land for the turn, so I don't think he can play that land.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure he played a land this turn. He fetched for the second Water Grave.
Correct.
So we'll get that fixed. No harm, no foul.
Tannen Grace is going to draw. He needs a land right now. He found a Young Pyromancer, not what he's looking for. And if this Young Pyromancer, if this Delver flips, which it will, I think we're just about done here, as this is going to be attack here for 8 to reanimate in hand.
I don't think he really wants to reanimate Street Wraith. That's 5 damage, which is a lot. But it does present lethal next turn, putting 11 power on the battlefield. So
yeah, I see no problem with this.
And he does have some protection here with Force of Will if Tannen has Lightning Bolt, but Tannen gets a little lucky. And it has Lightning Bolt plus Force of Will back up.
Oh, this makes it a little bit
Makes
easier.
it easy. Death Shadow. No reanimate shenanigans.
David Thomas going to win game number 1 here over Tannen Grace. Blue Black Death Shadow going to pick up game number 1 here over Grixis Delver. You also see that Jonathan Job is currently up a game here with Bat Nexus over Brennan DeCandio playing black blue midrange. So Team BCW's got their back against the wall right now. So we will take a look here at the sideboards very quickly. Let's start with Tannen Grace, who's got 2 Diabolic Edict, 2 Abrade, 2 Pyroblast, 2 Surgical Extraction, 7 one-ofs, Price of Progress, Null Rod, Marsh Casualties, Pithing Needle, Grim Lavamancer, Liliana the Last Hope, and a Flusterstorm.
So this is going to be an all-out slugfest. We've seen tempo games where Wasteland was hugely important. Game 1 here and the last time they played in Game 1. However, I think it's going to be more of an overall resource battle where each player just tries to answer the threats that the other one plays. You're going to see a lot of jockeying for position, getting a creature on the battlefield and trying to protect it with things like Daze or Force of Will, as well as just generic answers like Diabolic Edict. So I think Tannen is going to be bringing in Diabolic Edict, probably a Braid. Even though it only kills Delver of Secrets, Delver is a big deal. It's possible that he doesn't want to overload on that effect, though, because he already has 4 Bolts main deck. Pyroblast is great, being able to stop a Delver as well as countering the best card in the format, and Brainstorm, as well as winning battles over Force of Will when Force of Will is trying to target one of your bigger threats. I don't like Surgical Extraction or Price of Progress. Even though Price of Progress can maybe nick a game, David doesn't really have to play more than 2 lands at a time. So I think most of the time it's only going to do about 4 damage, and it's going to do just as much damage to Tannen. And it's going to be a battle over Wasteland as well. So the odds of it doing much of anything is pretty low until it ends the game.
On the side of things here for David Thomas, 3 Dreaded Knight, 3 Surgical Extraction, 2 Hymn to Torak, 2 Liliana the Last Hope, 2 Throne of Geth, a Diabolic Edict. Now Spellbound Man, Kaboom, and Engineered Explosives.
I don't like much from the side of David Thomas. I think Last Hope is going to come in on both sides as just a generic grindy card. Last Hope is much better from David's side because it can nick a Young Pyromancer. But as far as Tannen goes, he's usually just going to use it to bring back his creatures that die. I like Diabolic Edict, and I like Hymn to Torok, and I like trying to one-for-one your opponents to death.
Well, those are the options there for both players. Do want to correct a mistake very quickly here, too. Jonathan Job and Brennan DeCandio are still playing, so the only game result that we do have right now is the one you just watched there between David Thomas and Tannen Grace. Apologies for the confusion there, but one thing we can clear you up on is where you can get an awesome new playmat here. You like that transition? What are you laughing about?
You're just so good at it.
September 29th and the 30th. You can go to go.starcitygames.com/pre-release where you can get Meals on Steel. Some of our members are our Creature Collection, the Hippo, the Kraken, and so many more. Exclusive playmat available at participating stores, and you can find a participating store for a Guilds of Ravnica playmat at go.starcitygames.com/pre-release. And remember, keep it casual with that pre-release. Have some fun. Get some new players into the game. And Guilds of Ravnica should be a really awesome set anyway, so it'll be a great opportunity to play some Magic and get an awesome playmat while doing so.
Plus, Standard will probably be great once Kaladesh rotates. So you'll pick up a bunch of great Standard cards.
There you go. Woo. Keeping it positive. I like it.
Also, if you're a fan of Shocklands and Modern, this is going to be a great time to bring the prices down for those, and you can pick those up on the cheap, maybe trade for some at your local pre-release when they get opened in people's seal pools.
Will_J04, currently streaming SCG Tour Finals on my laptop and watching #SummerSlam 2018 at the same time. I feel like at Cedric A. Phillips will be proud. I am proud.
Nice.
I am proud.
Just your brands are just everywhere.
Everywhere.
You Wrestling, you Magics, you Ultimate Gods.
Everywhere. Just do it all. I hope SummerSlam is great, even though it's going to be super medium. Just lock it up. It's 7 hours long. Nothing should be that long.
Magic tournaments are way longer.
Nothing should be willingly that long. If Magic Tournament could be... No, see, a Magic Tournament is that long because, like, it kind of has to be. But if a Magic Tournament could be, like, 4 hours, I think everyone would do it. They're willingly having SummerSlam be 7 hours long.
Yeah, I really miss daily events.
Do you? What were dailies? I don't remember.
Just 4 rounds.
Is that
and
it?
you got prizes based on your rounds. But, you know, after you finish your round, you had, like, 20 or 30 minutes to watch a TV show in between rounds. It was great.
That was dope.
Now that they have leagues, I just feel obligated to play my next match.
I'm so used to... I can't stop in the middle of a league. It's bad.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know. I think it's because I've been playing Magic Online for like 15 years, but I'm just like, I have 3 more matches to play.
Yeah.
And it's like, I could just leave. No, I can't.
Half the time I just, like, play 2 matches, then I watch an episode of a TV show, and then I come back, I'm like, I'm just done for the day. Got my 2 matches in. I'm prepared for this tournament. And then I'll come back, like, Tuesday or Wednesday, I'll log back in. It's like, you have to finish this league. I'm like, nah, just drop. play another league in a different format.
I'm really glad I'm not the only one who's like, I have to finish when I start a league. Because I'm like, I'm gonna do a league for tonight. And then I just play all 5 matches.
I've dropped it 2-1 before.
That is maniacal behavior.
I just don't care.
That's obvious, given that you're dropping it 2-1.
Yeah. Well, if I think my deck's bad, it's more valuable to play test, you know, the different formats or different matchups, you know.
Brian Basoco, he wins game number 1 there over Ross Merriam, the Human's Mirror, currently
See if he can
to the player on the right.
See if he can break that curse of Ross Merriam being the only person to beat him in a Human's Mirror on the SCG Tour.
Well, here we go. Game number 2 about to be underway here between Tan and Grace and David Thomas. Tan and Grace going to be on the play. These players will take a look at their opening hands here in just a moment. Do keep in mind as well, folks, that next weekend the SCG Tour heads to Charm City. That's Baltimore, Maryland. Should be a lot of fun there. Modern Open. Going to be very well attended, as all of our Baltimore events are, right down there in the Inner Harbor. And if you're a baseball fan, I believe that the Baltimore Orioles, who are truly horrible, will be in town. And the tickets,
let's just insult everyone from Baltimore.
And the tickets will be cheap.
You know what's great about a bad baseball team?
The tickets are cheap.
They're still like, you know, they still win like 30 or 40 games a year because there's like 140 games.
Well, that's roughly the number of wins that the Baltimore Orioles currently have. That's how bad they are.
Great.
Like if you're a 500 team, you win 81. If you win half your games, you win 81. They are going to win way less than that.
They play 162 games?
That's right.
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
They're 37 and 87. Those tickets are like $5, dude.
37 and 87.
That's bad.
I hope the beer's cheap.
Everything's cheap.
It better be.
Baltimore.
Otherwise, no one's coming.
Thoughtseize is going to show you a hand of Ponder. Fatal Push, Gurmag, Angler, Delver, Secrets in a couple of lands there, included Delta, Scalding Tarn, and Marsh Flats.
Yeah, Thoughtseize is actually a great spell from Tannen here on the first turn. It's one of the easier ways for his deck to actually deal with a Gurmag Angler. However, based on the texture of his hand, it's possible that a Delver of Secrets on turn 1 could be more detrimental to the potential success of him this game.
Well, Delver Secret's going to bite the dust here, it looks like, to the Thoughtseize. Tannen says, I want to play some more turns, if I could. Scalding Tarn will be sacrificed here by David Thomas. I'm imagining an Underground Sea to start as opposed to Water Grave, but we'll see what Thomas opts to do.
Yeah, it's clear that he drew something to do here. His hand was like Fatal Push, Gurmag, and some lands, if I'm not mistaken. He wants to deal himself a little bit of damage because he doesn't have Street Wraith, doesn't have Thoughtseize, and if he draws a Death Shadow, he wants to be low enough so he can actually get it onto the battlefield. But what I want to talk about really is the Thoughtseize on the Delver of Secrets. I think that signifies a few things from Tannen's side. I think, A, it means he doesn't have a day, so he couldn't have countered on turn 1. B, I don't think he has a removal spell for it early on, and it could just chunk him for a large chunk of damage. And C, Tannen actually has an answer to the Gurmag Angler, and whether that's something like Diabolic Edict or just like Young Pyromancer slash True Name Nemesis is yet to be seen.
Ponder here.
Thomas's opener after the Thoughtseize, not great. Not a ton to do. A little bit defensive with the Fatal Push and just the slow Gurmag Angler. Drew the Ponder and is looking to find something like Brainstorm here to get rid of some of those excess lands.
Pass that turn back. Let's go over to Tannen Grace. It's a Flooded Strand. It's a Ponder.
So this is a game where Tannen knows that David has access to a bunch of mana, and his spells are all relatively cheap. And even though he has Wasteland in hand, and he could just take David off of the one land he has on the battlefield, it's more important for Tannen to develop his mana than it is to Wasteland off of David off of a land, because even though it takes off the battlefield and slows him down next turn, he has enough land to actually play Magic for the rest of the game.
Ponders unresolving. Pass the turn back. I do think that in this matchup, Tannen is probably the control deck.
I'll agree with that.
I think he wants to play the longer game because he wants to get a card like True Name Nemesis established, things of that nature. I do think that Tannen has the ability to win a shorter game because he has a Delver of Secrets deck, so he can, of course, do the Delver Wasteland, har, you lose draws, but for the most part, I think he wants to be the slower deck, grind out advantages with Young Pyromancer and True Name Nemesis and try to win the game that way.
Oh, this is a big draw from David Thomas here. He found a Street Wraith, and if he has a fetch land, he's able to cast Gurmag Angler this turn. The real question is, does he want to play around Daze or not? And I think he does not.
Well, he's going to sacrifice this Marsh Flats. We'll see what land he wants to get here. Again, Watery Grave and Underground Sea are the options. Grave, of course, will deal him more damage. Turn on Death Shadow.
Remember what I said about that Thoughtseize taking the Delver of Secrets, and he probably doesn't have Daze in hand?
Mm-hmm.
I think David thinks the same thing.
Well, David's going to get himself an Underground Sea here, so he's not going to deal himself too much damage this go-around.
No, he wants to make sure that if he draws like another Thoughtseize, a Snuff Out, or a Street Wraith, he has enough life to actually use it without putting too much pressure on his life total.
Looks like he's going to go towards Reanimate on Street Wraith.
Yeesh!
And again, Street Wraith being reanimated, it's going to bring David Thomas's life total lower for Death Shadow. It gives him a 3/4 threat. There is a Daze there. So Tannen with a Daze.
I was wrong. Yeah, I guess he just didn't want to Daze the Delver. That's fine.
Maybe he found the Daze off of the Ponder. Who knows?
Yeah. Maybe he's also fine getting Daze there just because it means there's no threat of a True Name Nemesis on the following turn. And there's a potential he could actually just race True Name Nemesis with Street Wraith versus the Swamp, the Underground Sea from Tannen's side. Being at a pretty low life total, though, that's a dangerous prospect. This Death Shadow deck is not easy to play. Figuring out which lands to fetch early on is actually pretty important. Making sure you don't take too much damage in some spots. Making sure you get your life total low enough for Death Shadow. It's a dangerous dance.
It'll be a Grimloft Mancer into a Preordain here for Tannen Grace. Tannen has found his card, and we're going to head back over to David Thomas. DT will draw. He'll play a Pluto Delta. He'll sack that Pluto Delta. We'll see how low he wants to go. Again, at 13 right now. Could go down to 11 if he'd like to.
You know what this is?
Nope.
Pretty sure it's a Liliana Last Hope.
That's a good Magic card right now.
Fetching 3 here. I mean, he could be going like Gurmag into Death Shadow. This is a very fast fetch without thinking too much, and usually when you have a fetch land, you like to save it for the likes of Ponder and Brainstorm. So he's definitely using all 3 mana this turn. I'm very curious what it is.
Fatal Push is going to go after Gurmag, or excuse me, going to go after Grim Lavamancer, not Gurmag Angler. Follow-up. That's the Gurmag Angler I meant to say. So, going to delve away 6 cards, Angler on the battlefield.
Yep, plays around Daze, and then, ooh, he's got a Death Shadow in hand too. It's going to be tough for Tannen.
Yeah, it's a threat-heavy draw here for David Thomas. He does have a Death Shadow as backup, let out with that Delver of Secrets maybe as bait. Tannen's going to sacrifice his copy of Scalding Tarn, get himself a Volcanic Island. Curious to see if he has a 3-mana spell that he'd like to play this turn, like maybe a True Name Nemesis. It appears that's not the case. He's going to go towards Young Pyromancer. That will resolve. This will be a Lightning Bolt. That'll take care of the Delver. Ross Merriam Elemental Token onto the battlefield. That'll probably do a nice job of checking the Gurmag Angler, at least for the moment.
Yeah, I mean, the tokens from Young Pyromancer are pivotal in keeping Gurmag Angler and even large Death Shadows in check. However, Fatal Push off the top for David Thomas is going to wreck that plan quite nicely.
Gurmag Angler going to come in. Looks like Tannen's going to take this first hit. Doesn't have any interest in blocking with the Elemental Token just yet. We're all tied. Never mind, I take it back. Looks like he will block. So, Grace will stay at 16. And now here is Death Shadow getting a Watery Grave, and David Thomas falling down even a little bit lower to make that Death Shadow a little bit larger.
Yeah, and that's going to keep it out of Lightning Bolt range. If he just fetched down to 10, it would be a 3-3, and any Lightning Bolt from 10 would be able to take care of it. Now it's a 5-5, yes, 2 very large threats on the battlefield that are really, really tough for him to get off the table. I think this is going to be a common occurrence in the Death Shadow versus Grixis Delver matchups where you just see the threats from the Death Shadow deck just being too big for the Lightning Bolts and such to deal with.
There's a Wasteland. Follow-up. That's a Delver of Secrets, and now this is a Diabolic Edict.
That's a good start. Diabolic Edict taking care of the Gurmag Angler.
Pass the turn back. It's a Snuff Out, and that is going to...
That's it. Pan the life.
That is going to do it.
Yikes.
David Thomas going to win this game and match here over Tannen Grace. That's one up there for the team of Thomas, Basoco, and Job. It's on Merriam and DeCandio now to get the job done. Seems like a tough matchup there for Tannen. And now we prepare to move over to Modern, where we're going to watch Ross Merriam and Brian Basoco. They are in game number 2 of Humans Mirror, and we'll see where things do stand here. Looks like Ross might be a little bit ahead right now. Checking in on this game state, I see Mantis Rider, and it looks like a Phantasmal Image that's copied a Mantis Rider. Over there for Merriam, a Bugler, a Meddling Mage, which will confirm what it's naming. I see a Champion of the Parish with 3 counters on it, and a Noble Hierarch. Looks like Ross is just resolving the Bugler right now, and he's opted to take a Hostage Taker.
Yeah, Ross, I think, is in pretty good shape here. Basoco is down to 8 already. Wow, this is tough.
Meddling Mage is naming Reflector Mage. That image on Brian Basoco's side is a Mantis Rider. You saw that Militia Bugler take a Hostage Taker. And now we're going to see an attack here. It looks like with Meddling Mage plus Exalted. Not sure Champion of the Parish wants to attack instead because a double block could take place. Hard to say exactly what Ross wants to do, but we'll find out.
Honestly, if I'm Ross, I'm fine trading my Champion of the Parish for one of the Mantis Riders just because I feel like the easiest way to lose this game for Ross is if another Mantis Rider or Phantasmal Image comes down and threatens to kill him in 2 turns with a block next turn.
This will be a Cavern of Souls. We'll see what this is naming here in just a moment. The follow-up is a Vial. Looks like Hostage Taker is the last card in Merriam's hand. Cavern is naming Illusion in this instance. Looks like 1 on Human, 1 on Illusion as we head back over to Brian Basoco. David Thomas, a careful observer at this point. Vial going to stay at 2 here for Basoco. He is going to tap for mana. He is going to play a Whirler Rogue.
Ooh, baby.
Whirler Rogue, a card we will take a look at because that's definitely going to change the dynamic of this game.
Yeah, it's a really strong card in grindy matchups. A 4-mana 2/2 Human Artificer that creates multiple Thopters when it enters the battlefield, and you can tap 2 Thopters to make a creature unblockable, I believe.
Tap 2 untapped artifacts you control. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. Now, of course, you don't want to target your Phantasmal Image with that, but you are happy to target some other things. But most importantly, he's made some flyers. Now, Basoco did, of course, attack for 6 in the air with those Mantis Riders. So
that's true. The Hostage Taker from Ross here is very important because it keeps him from taking lethal next turn. That Whirler Rogue created 2 more power worth of flying, which does give Basoco 8 total power with Ross at 8 life.
Merriam is going to Phantasmal Image. Ooh, that's huge. The Whirler Rogue.
That's just game!
And now he gets 2 creatures to be able to make his Champion of the Parish unblockable, perhaps?
That looks like that's what's going to happen if you ask me.
Now, it looks like maybe Brian has something that he can vial in, which is why David Thomas is jumping into the fray here. This is getting a little bit interesting now. Oh, with the... that's brilliant.
That's so smart.
So, with the Whirler Rogue's trigger on the stack, Whirler Rogue's ability is going to target the Phantasmal Image, then the artifacts resolve, then Ross will be able to win, but not just yet. David Thomas jumped in there real quick, I think, and saved Brian. And now things get a lot more difficult because Ross thought that might be a game winner, where now it is not.
And now he doesn't have enough mana to Hostage Taker. I think he just lost. I think the game is over. Oh, no, he makes 2 flyers.
So, yeah, he still gets 2 Thopters.
Okay.
He still gets 2 Thopters.
Okay. Reset. Now we have a game. Someone stole the Thopters. Call the police. Let's get Barbecue Becky up in here.
This is very interesting now. That was a great play there by that team.
And that's why David Thomas is on the team. He saved him right there. I think he was going to let it go.
That was huge. That was huge. Thomas Basoco, Job, able to see that line of play. There's your 2 Thopters. And what's tough here, too, is Ross had 1 artifact on the battlefield there in the vial, and Ross, I think, thought that, oh, man, I'm just going to win the game right now. I'm going to copy this Whirler Rogue. I'm going to make this champion of the parish unblockable. You're going to lose the game. Now he's got to rethink everything. And what's even the best attack here? That's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, champion of the parish can only become 6/6, and it's probably just going to get chump blocked by the Whirler Rogue, if I had to guess. So 8 power and flyers is pretty important, and you don't really want to lose your Phantasmal Image. You know, there is a chance he wants to block with the Phantasmal Image Mantis Rider just because next turn is going to die to the Hostage Taker. But that 3 damage is very important next turn, forcing the 2 Thopters from Ross into chump block mode.
Makes you also wonder what's going on right now in Brian Basoco's hand. He's got a card left there. He's got a vial on 2. It's hard to predict exactly what that could be, and Brian's got some real thinking to do, and as does David Thomas. And Jonathan Job can't really help because he's deep in a match against Brendan DeCandio at the moment. So what will Basoco do? A player who is so good in the Human's Mirror and actually has built his deck somewhat to beat the Human's Mirror. You see Whirler Rogue playing a huge role in things, not a card you really ever see. This will be a vile act of, maybe not. Was that a vile bluff? Who knows? As we can tell you one thing, Brendan DeCandio, he ain't bluffing. He wins game number 1 against Jonathan Job. Black-Blue mid-range up a game here over Bant Nexus. I think that's a great matchup for DeCandio. I think he'll probably be able to beat Job in one of these 2 sideboarded games. So for Ross Merriam, if his team BCW, wants to get this, he's got to win this game and this match. What does Brian Basoco do here?
This is a really tough spot. I mean, he left the Ether Ball on 2, so there's a good chance he has a 2 in hand. What that 2 is, you know, matters a lot.
Ooh. Phantasmal Image copying Whirler Rogue, 2 more Thopters. Wow. Now what?
I don't know.
Chump block with a Thopter, okay.
So those Thopters are basically on chump block duty from Ross's side because the Mantis Riders are threatening a ton of damage.
Well, I'm not sure that they both have to block. I think only one has to block.
Oh, that's true. There is a chance that Basoco uses Ether Vial plus the 3 Thopters to make multiple creatures unblockable, but I don't think that's quite enough to get through. If he drew another Mantis Rider, however, I do think it's enough to get it through.
All right, so Vial plus this Thopter is going to make the actual Mantis Rider unblockable. So this is going to be an attack here for 8. Maybe.
It's possible he just wants to attack with the Mantis Riders. There's a lot of potential damage coming back at him next turn. The problem is if he doesn't present a lethal attack, the Thopter just don't have to block.
But I think at the same time, I think that Ross is incentivized to try to play as long of a game as he can now because of the Hostage Taker. This is very, very difficult. Because if Brian gets too aggressive here, he could end up losing on the counterattack. Potentially, depending on what Ross finds. Ross is also interested in keeping his ability to draw another Phantasmal Image and actually activating the Whirler Rogue this go around as well. Because if he does peel another image, he'll actually have enough artifacts if he manages his resources correctly to make Champion of the Parish unblockable. This is an extremely, extremely complicated battlefield right now. One misstep from either player could cause them the entire game and potentially the tournament.
Looks like we're attacking for 8, putting Ross Merriam to the test. He can't block the original Mantis Rider, but he can chump block and or trade with a Thopter. The problem is if he goes to 3 or less life, next turn a potential Mantis Rider attack with the Whirler Rogue's ability could threaten lethal.
So it looks like it might just be 3 unblockable.
Yeah, and that's also fine because if he survives with 4 artifacts, he can use those 4 artifacts to make the Mantis Rider and the original Whirler Rogue unblockable, which is exactly 5.
Image is a game winner.
Would it not be this? Oh, it wouldn't be the same scenario because the 2 Thopters that are currently sitting on the battlefield.
Yep. Not sure what Rasha drew.
It's possible now he needs to hostage taker the original Mantis Rider because then the Whirler Rogue could not target the Phantasmal Image Mantis Rider or else it would die.
So what's difficult here is Brian can present lethal next turn. Brian can say, I'll use a Thopter and a Vial, make my Mantis Rider unblockable. I'll use my other 2 Thopters, make my Whirler Rogue unblockable. That's 5 damage.
Yep.
That's my entire, battlefield. That's my entire everything. But that's good enough to get the job done. So what that means is that if Ross plays Hostage Taker and makes the obvious play of killing a Phantasmal Image, either one, he leaves himself dead.
Right. I think he understands this. Ross is very good at this this minute combat math and these big board stalls. So I think he's definitely going to hostage taker the Mantis Rider since that presents the most amount of damage. But it'll be interesting to see. Very curious what happens here.
And it makes you wonder, too, what's the card that Ross Merriam drew? Because now Ross gets this weird advantage of he's got a Vial, and I don't know what's going on with it, and neither does Brian or anybody else on the other side of the battlefield. So Ross is going to make what looks to be the easiest attack and says, I'm going to get in here with a lethal attack with Champion of the Parish. And Brian's got to decide how he wants to block, because there's also another card to weigh into the equation here, which is Reflector Mage. If Brian, for example, blocks with one of those Whirler Rogues, let's say he blocks with the if he blocks with the actual Whirler Rogue, then Phantasmal Image can take care. Reflector Mage can take care of something. I suppose because Brian's Vial is at 3, if you Reflector Mage actual Whirler Rogue, he can just bring the Vial up to 4.
Yeah.
But as we run these situations through our head, Todd, you know that Brian, David, and John are doing the exact same thing.
Oh, absolutely. This is crucial, and these are the types of interaction you see a lot. Whirler Rogue is definitely changing the texture of this game. Hostage Taker also playing a big role. These are sideboard cards that you don't see a whole lot. The chump block with Whirler Rogue here, I love this. Oh, this is such a good block. So he's chump blocking with Whirler Rogue because he doesn't really have a way to get Hostage Taker off the battlefield. And Hostage Taker can target that Whirler Rogue. And then next turn, Ross could just cast it and win the game on the spot.
So that's an okay block to me. But now, so if Ross says, I'm going to play Hostage Taker, and if I play Hostage Taker now, and I target your Phantasmal Image, that means your Whirler Rogue game plan is out. So I'm curious what Ross is going to be targeting here with this Hostage Taker. This is, I don't want to say it's the game, but it's close to it.
It has to be the Mantis Rider now that the chump block on the Whirler Rogue has happened.
Especially because Whirler Rogue can't target the Phantasmal Imaged Mantis Rider? Okay.
It could, but just to clock it. But then the Whirler Rogue copy a Phantasmal Image. See, this is really complicated because these cards are all copies of other things.
Well, no, what I'm saying is the Whirler Rogue Phantasmal Image cannot target the Phantasmal Image Mantis Rider because it would kill it.
Yes.
Let's see what this is. This is 2 copies of Noble Hierarch, and so this is a lethal attack.
Yeah, this is an attack for 5 here with the Mantis Rider, which is going to force a chump block with the Thopter. However, he could choose to...
Ooh, yeah, I like this.
He's making one of these unblockable and attacking for 3.
Well, it still taps to attack.
Yeah. So he taps the Ether Vial and a Thopter to make a Thopter unblockable, attacks for 3 Exalted, and has enough creatures to block next turn to survive, and then can just do it again. As long as he has 1 Noble Hierarch left over, he can just do it again next turn. But he needs to make sure the Phantasmal Image stays in play, this copying the Whirler Rogue, and at least 2 Thopters, and the 1 Noble Hierarch.
See, my question here is, was Ross supposed to... Was Ross supposed to target the Phantasmal Imaged Whirler Rogue? Because it seemed like Whirler Rogue was the avenue to victory there for Brian Basoco.
That's possible. I guess he got a little greedy, maybe thought that the Mantis Rider on his side of the battlefield was a little more desirable.
But it's also tough, too, because it was unclear exactly what Brian had in his hand, and 2 Noble Hierarchs you would think are pretty irrelevant cards, but those Exalted triggers are very, very powerful with what was found here. So now Ross has even more thinking to do. One of the options, of course, is just casting Mantis Rider from underneath Hostage Taker, but we have no idea what Ross has in his hand right now.
This is such a good game, and a tough game from both sides.
So Ross is going to cast Mantis Rider, trigger, pump the champion.
Now he's got to figure out if he has a good attack here that can present lethal without leaving him dead. I'm very curious what the 2 cards in his hand are, because if they're anything but Reflector Mage or is that Staticaster, he might just be dead. He might need to just swing all out with everything and hope that Basoco blocks with enough stuff that he's unable to chain the Whirler activation as well as the Noble Hierarch Exalted.
There's 5 blockers?
Yeah, there's 5 blockers, but he desperately needs to keep the Whirler Virtuoso image as well as 1 Noble Hierarch. That's his route to victory, because the Ether Vial plus 1 token can make another token unblockable, and he needs 1 pump effect with the Noble Hierarch.
It's so easy to just say attack with everything. Let's see what happens, but that doesn't feel right to me.
Well, if he attacks with everything and sees what happened, Basoco has the option to just go to 1 life and block in such a way that it leaves himself with like 2 power that can just swing back and win the game through the Mantis Rider blocking. Well, I guess the Bugler has Vigilance too, so
yeah,
attacking with everything might just be correct. But he decides to leave back a Thopter.
Thopter.
Gives him 3 blockers.
And the really tough thing is we have legitimately no clue what's in Ross's hand, and neither does Brian.
That's true.
And I actually kind of like not knowing what's in Ross's hand in this instance, because now we get to try to figure out exactly what he's up to from Brian's side of the table.
Yeah, so we have to block. We can take 4, but we can't take 5. I think he's going to lose too many creatures, so he's not going to be able to use the Whirler plus the Thopters next turn to present lethal.
So you obviously got to block the champ. Don't forget too, that like Brian is somewhat incentivized to keep his Whirler Virtuoso around, his Whirler Rogue around, which is the Phantasmal Mage. But he also has an artifact in Vial,
right,
that he can use to make something unblockable. It's like this hidden mode on Vial.
Right. As long as he has either a Thopter around or a Noble Hierarch around, on top of the Vial and a second Thopter, a Noble Hierarch will win the game. Dal's Lieutenant could win the game. But honestly, I think he has to block with the other Noble Hierarch or the Whirler here. But I think Whirler is his only path to victory. So I think in order to survive, he just has to block with Noble Hierarch and go to 2 life.
The Phantasmal Mage that Brian is grabbing at right now, this is a Mantis Rider. Now, of course, they will announce exactly what they are blocking with for clarification. But remember, the one that's at the bottom of the screen is a Whirler Rogue. This one is Mantis Rider.
So if he puts, let's say he puts the copied Mantis Rider onto the Bugler, his Mantis Rider will survive. He can put the Thopter in front of the real Mantis Rider, and then he can put the other Noble Hierarch in front of the Champion of the Parish. That'll have Meddling Mage coming through and Thopter coming through and dealing 3 damage and putting him down to 2. And that'll leave him with the Whirler as well as the copied Mantis Rider, but that's it.
Now you see David Thomas, he chimed in and said, I think our Mantis Rider should try to trade. I think that your Hostage Taker, you got to block that Hostage Taker, you got to block that Bugler. We got to save our Whirler. And see David saying, okay, if we block like this, then we can just attack in the air for 3?
Yeah, that might be enough. Depending on what Ross has in hand, I feel like if it was a Reflector Mage, he would have done it pre-combat. But who knows?
Part of me thinks he would, but part of me thinks he wouldn't.
Like, David found the block in such a way that it's the obvious onboard win, but that excludes Ross having drawn anything at all.
He plays the plains and passes the turn back, so he's got to have something here.
Something that costs 3 that he can put in the play off a vial.
That is going to do it. David Thomas, Brian Basoco, and Jonathan Job are going to win this game and match over Tannen Grace, Ross Merriam, and Brendan DeCandio. Jonathan Job, Brian Basoco, they are the first 2-time Team Constructed champions here on the SCG Tour, and you can see the anguish there on Tannen Grace and Ross Merriam. They were so close once again.